This is Mike Acerra with Thinking with Mike, and Stephanie Stuckey is my guest. And Stephanie, do you know why you're here?
I think so. Do you want to talk to interesting people about interesting things? So
You,
I'll try to be
yeah,
interesting today.
I could tell you were always an A student. Yes, excellent.
Not always.
No, well, you got
Not
through law
always.
school, okay, so that's good. So
Yeah,
we're going to talk a little bit about your career, but I'm really interested in stories. And my God, your family. You're I find like I relate to you in a lot of ways because we're a similar age and we have we're for the same generations essentially, and I see myself as a third generation person. I know your family goes back to probably the Mayflower or something. We're Italian Americans, but I think a lot of families came into their own during the Depression. I think before
that's
the
right.
Depression and before the era of the car, which I think gave people the power to have a truck, so an electrician or carpenter could actually go to a different county if you imply his trade. Before that, you had a horse, right? You were stuck. So I think the car kind of revolutionized so many things, right? It gave people the
Yes.
opportunity to say, well, not only to start a business, but the road then became a captive audience. You had people that had money in their pocket that would travel from the north to Florida, and anybody who had any kind of roadside sign, right?
Yeah.
A business
Yeah.
could make money, and that's kind of the history of your family. So I want to talk about that. Your grandfather WC.
No, WS. Close
WS,
though.
I'm sorry, WS.
Yeah, WC Fields, right? You made
Yeah,
me think of
right. It's like I
that.
had
I
that.
wish I wish
One of my
my
favorites.
grandfather had some of those one-liners like WC Fields.
Wasn't he the best? We
The
need one of those
best.
guys now.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the problem with people our generation. We had older parents, and we have access to the golden era of Hollywood, and people are younger than us
Oh
like, what are you
yeah.
talking about? So,
Yeah.
but you represent Stuckey's to me represents like a scene in Mad Men. Where if he's in the South, you would have pulled over. Good chance you would have pulled over to Stuckey's and gone
That's
to
right.
It would have been a Texaco station, perhaps, and
Texaco.
and you would have you would have got the pecan roll, and the kid in the back would have been asking for divinity, and so it was these people who were like saying, well, we got pecans, we got sugar, we got corn syrup. What can we do to make some money around here? And you kind of created you kind
Yeah.
of invented. You're part of the invention of Americana. And I think people now jumping to today, that's a value that
Yes.
represents a certain kind of authenticity, right? It
Exactly.
harkens back to a real history. I mean, people go and hunt down signs in old barns, right? That tin signs
Yes.
and want to put them in their basements. People are hungering for this, and I'm jumping all over the place, I know, but you guys, your family kind of lost hold of the company for a while, but you got it back,
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
coming back with a vengeance, it seems like. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how you see your family and your little dynasty you've got going, and how now you're like the Ethel the second, right?
Yeah, yeah. My name is Ethel Stephanie Stuckey. I'm named after
Yeah,
my grandmother who
right.
came up with that original pecan log roll recipe. It was an old family recipe. And you're right. We were created during the Great Depression, which I think really tough times forged perseverance and resilience. And my grandfather's business, like so many other companies that we love, came out of economic hard times. I mean, there is a long, long list of the companies that we love that were founded during hard times. Revlon, Target, Microsoft, Airbnb. I mean, from more recent during the Great Recession in 2008 to dating back to the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
So very proud of that history. And it was a whole generation that had to roll up their sleeves and get to work. And it was the car generation. Suddenly, you were not only able to connect to getting your skills to other places, like you referenced, electricians and whatnot, but in a weird sort of way, my grandfather built a community around people who were mobile, because suddenly there was this great love of road tripping. And we were the very first, I like to joke, we were the OG of roadside retail. We were the first chain that offered a consistent place to pull over where you could get gas. He had a deal with Texaco. You could have clean restrooms. He had kitschy souvenirs. We had our pecans and our candies. And it was just a experience. You know, I
Yeah, an
see you
event.
got
Yeah,
Mickey
yeah.
Mouse in the background, right? Like
That's
Walt
for you. That's for
Disney.
your. That's for your sake. I
Yes.
said, what do I have? Americana. Oh, I got that Mickey Mouse. I'll put
Yes.
that there. Yeah.
Well, Walt
Yeah.
Disney inspired so many people to recognize that it's not just buying a product, it's an experience. So we were not just selling pecan lodgers, we're selling the road trip. We were selling that
Well,
joy
weren't a
of
lot since you're in
travel.
Georgia? Weren't people en route to
Yes.
Orlando? Right.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, we're a tourism business. We're a hospitality business. We grew as tourist destinations grew. We do well if attractions like Disneyland, Weeki Wachee, Cypress Gardens, Goofy Golf, south of the border, the
Wiki
world's largest
Wachi.
belt buckle, right? Like
I
all
am a
those
Wiki Wachi
places.
nut. I went to Wiki Wachi
Yes.
this winter for the first time, and I felt like I was in a Mad Men episode, because that place is like it was 50, 60 years ago. I mean, that place has not really changed very much. And you get these high school kids,
Wow.
maybe early college kids, beautiful women mostly, and they're dressed up like mermaids, right? And they're in a tank. They're in a pool. They're
Yeah.
actually in the source of the
Yeah.
Wiki Wachi River, and they've built a underwater kind of aquarium. Right, you're looking into the pool where the spring is coming out.
Wow.
Have you been there?
I haven't been since I was a kid, so I
Oh
have
my
to go
God.
back. I love that it's
Well,
kind
it's
of
very
frozen in
kitschy.
time.
It's super
Well,
kitschy.
see, that's us. Like, and that
Mhm.
was part of when you're right. We fell out of family hands for decades. My grandfather sold the business. My dad got it back, but then my dad and his business partners retired. They left a skeleton crew running what was left of Stuckeys, and we lost a couple of big accounts. And the company had been losing money when I was given the opportunity to come in, and I actually bought the company. I was not
Right.
given the company. And
At that time, was the
look,
company more of the brand name? Did you have any infrastructure
yeah,
at all? Just the
no.
name.
We had a rented warehouse
Right.
that was full of inventory,
Mm-hmm.
about 30% of which had not been turning. It was really what they call dead inventory. They'd just been
Right.
sitting there for years, literally gathering dust. And we had stores that we license, but we do not own or operate any of the locations. There's 20 standalone Stuckeys still around, and then there's 45 stores within a store. So you'll pull over to a Pilot or a Travel Plaza, and there'll be a section that's Stuckeys, and they pay a very modest license fee to display our products and our brand. And we were losing money. We were six figures in debt. So I bought a brand. I bought the experience that people remember, like you, like I did. I road trip like everyone else.
You bought your name back, right?
I bought the name, but it's interesting because I bought it for my dad and his business partners. But my dad's business partners were not going to give me the company. And then my father's shares, this gets a little in the weeds, but he had put all of his shares in a irrevocable trust. So I had to buy it from the trustee. So it was a bit of a back and forth negotiation to actually.
Why did you do it?
Get the company.
I mean, you're a very successful woman. You're third generation. Your parents put you through law school there, and you were a congresswoman for ages over in Atlanta. You have an environmental law firm. I mean, you're a very successful person. You didn't have to do this. Why are you doing this?
Well, if I didn't, nobody else was. No one else in the family wanted to buy the company. They either didn't have the resources or they didn't have the interest. And I think in many ways, too often we think of entrepreneurs as people in their 20s wearing hoodies and sneakers, and that's great. But I think actually being in your 50s and being an entrepreneur, even for the first time, there are incredible advantages. I had a lifetime of building up credit. I had savings, even though a fair amount of my jobs were government jobs. So being in the state legislature is not super well paying, but I have resources and I had savings. So I had the capacity to buy the company, and I believed in the brand. My dad actually, I love him and dearly, and he's still very much around. He gives me a lot of advice, good and bad, about what he thinks I'm doing. And when I first said I was going to do this, he said, "Well, Stephanie, you've never even run a lemonade stand. What makes you think you can run Stuckeys?" And I said, "Well, I don't think I can run a lemonade stand, but I think I can run Stuckeys. And it's
Mm.
because I understand the brand. I understand the story. I understand the experience. I knew my grandfather. I was 12 when he died. I knew his vision. And I also got all of his papers. My mom gave me his papers. And so I went through 6 cases of archival material that had not been opened since the
Wow.
1960s. And he went from being my grandfather to being Stuckey, to being the businessman. And I learned how he did it. And I thought, why can't we do this again? Why can't we go back to the way he ran the company? I looked at what made us profitable, which was the sale of our product. And that's how he started.
Well, he
So
did, but he
yeah,
did move to vertically integrate, right? He got his own,
yes.
it's so funny. It reminded me of Dr. Evil, when Dr. Evil wakes up and he goes, what have you been doing since I've been asleep for 50 years? He goes, well, we bought a lot of factories, right? And we bought a
Yeah.
factory in Chicago that makes little models of factories. But like your grandfather bought, you want to have signs, like hundreds of signs all over the Southwest, the South mostly. And so he bought a sign company, right? And then he bought a truck company so he can move his stuff around. And I think you bought a pecan farm, right? Or a couple. And you built no, you never did that.
No,
But did you make a candy factory though? You did build a candy factory.
He had a
though.
candy plant.
Yeah.
He had a shelling facility. He had trucking and a sign company. But that doesn't happen overnight.
No, I understand.
It took him 3 years to get the capital to have that very first store.
Right.
And then over a couple of years, he built up to 3 stores. And then World War II hit. He lost 2 of the stores because of rationing. And that's when he had to pivot.
Your primary thing is you're selling sugar products, and they ration sugar, right?
And they ration gas. So people weren't traveling.
They weren't driving.
Yeah. So he had to be resourceful. He had to pivot. He had to realize, how am I making money? And he started selling to the troops. He got a contract with the defense. I think at that point there wasn't a Department of Defense. I think it was with the Army. But in any event, he was in the ration kits. Stuckey's products were in the ration kits. So he had to figure out how to mass manufacture. He had to figure out how to go from just serving product fresh on site to preserving to packaging. And then he transitioned from there to creating attractive boxes. So when the war ended and the servicemen and women were coming home, they remembered us in their mess kits. And he started selling to other retailers. So our first big account was actually Rich's department store in Atlanta. And then he slowly started building the store. So I'm taking a page from his playbook.
No, it's awesome.
We're able to make money from selling products. So we bought a candy plant. We bought a manufacturing facility that shells pecans. And I'd love to have stores someday, but we're not there yet. We're getting there.
And it's so funny because, you remember growing up, there'd be stores, and there are restaurants now like Applebee's where they have kind of a fakey kind of made up authenticity. They're trying to create like the neighborhood store, or they put the antiques on the wall, and but it seems kind of a little fabricated a little bit, but they're trying to do something that psychologically people are attracted to, right? And and you probably had those restaurants you went to when you were a kid that were the real deal, that were the real, and when you could find those authentic places, people absolutely love it. They get loyal to it. And because I think we're sentimental, emotional creatures, and we want to be attached to a real experience.
Sorry, I had to plug my computer in. I got your battery is running low.
I get that a lot. Those mobile computers. But so you that's one of the things you have with the brand is you have a real story. Stuckey's, like I said, could have been, you're one of the first places where the owner had the smart sense to paint his roof a color, right? Were you guys the blue roofs?
Yeah. So there's an interesting story around that. Initially, we didn't have consistent branding in our architectural design. And it's an example of how you have to pivot. When Eisenhower built the interstate highway system, suddenly all of these roads that people have been taking, like Route 66, Dixie Highway, the Lincoln Highway, that Stuckey's and so many other stores, there were all these little businesses, and those roads went through Maintown America. Main Street America. So all these small towns, all these communities, all these mom and pop stores were bypassed by the interstate. And, the good thing is it didn't happen overnight, right? I mean, they built the interstate for decades. So
took a while.
Yeah, it took a while. So my grandfather had some time to transition, but he had to make the decision to start shuttering those stores and moving to the interstate. The good news is land was affordable at that time. He actually found out where the highway was going and would start buying up the land as soon as he found out where the highway was going.
Right.
And so he would get good prices because the word hadn't gotten out. It's kind of like what Walt Disney did, right? Although I don't think my grandfather had a shell company. If he did, that's not in any of the paperwork. Whereas Disney, bought up all that land in Florida, not under the name Disney, with a shell company. Yeah. So, but my grandfather bought up land, and then he took that as an opportunity to have a consistent brand, to have this design, to have that. It was a slope roof with a blue teal color and the Texaco sign. And he just started having a consistent logo, a consistent look to the store, consistent standards and quality, clean restrooms. But what I think was so genius about what he did, he still had a local feel. So if you pulled over in Kissimmee, Florida, or if you pulled over in Anahuac, Texas, you would still have a sense that you were in Florida or you were in Texas by the product that he selected. So he'd sell local. If you were in Florida, you get a gator head or some fresh citrus fruit, some shell statues. And if you were in Texas, you would get rhinestones and Native American souvenirs and, just the whole gamut of stuff that hook 'em horns and Texas state flags and cowboy hats. So you would have a sense of place.
Yeah, there are some stores now. When you I do a lot of traveling in my business, so there's a couple different ones. You get the truck stops like the pilots, and they're definitely geared towards truck drivers, right? The family experience is not as good, but it's good for truck drivers. They get showers, But what's the one? It's in Wisconsin. It's all over the West. It's a big one. Oh, I can't think of the name of it right now. And
there's Sheetz, there's Wawa. Of course, Bucky's is one based in
Wawa,
Texas.
Yeah. And some of these are really good at when you're in the West. They'll have Native American stuff all over the place. When you hit Colorado, it's beautiful. So you feel like a tourist. You feel like you're getting your. It's not like you're going to a standard gas station and you're getting your jerky and they're. And it must require that your dad would have had smart little buyers in the area, right? That would source these local.
That's a good question. I know my grandfather had a distribution facility in Eastman, Georgia. So he sourced a lot of the product himself, and he had established buyers throughout the country that he worked with. And every now and then I'll get an email from someone who said, hey, my dad or my grandfather sold product to Stuckeys. It's pretty cool. I just got back from a trade show in Vegas, and there was this old firm, been around for 80 years. And they said, we've been doing business on and off with Stuckeys for decades. So I'm like, we're definitely going to order from them. So yeah, he had some product that he would source and buy in bulk that he knew he could sell everywhere. But yeah, the cool thing about his structure was every store was independently owned and operated by, at that time, it was a husband and wife team who actually lived in the store. They lived in the back of the store. So they had a sense of pride and a sense of ownership because it was their store. And my grandfather made his profit from the sale of the product and the sale of gas. He got a percentage of every gallon sold from Texaco. So he made money from gas, and he made money from sale of the candy products and the nut products, and then some of the souvenirs. But my assumption is that the couple could source locally as well.
Yeah, so
I should check on that.
So he didn't own like McDonald's. He didn't own the property.
No,
he didn't own. Oh.
No.
Would he build the building or no?
Depended on the finances of the couple. So in some cases, he would.
Would he do the financing? Would he do the financing, the loan?
Sometimes. I found that in his paperwork where he would front the money, and then he always got paid back usually within a year or two from the profits. So they would work out a deal where he would get a certain percentage of the profits. And then, the other thing he did that was very smart, my dad told me this was not in all the papers. The challenge when your company gets sold is a lot of those papers are gone. So, I went into his old office, which is a complete shambles. the building has been abandoned for over a decade. It's heartbreaking. And there's nothing, there's no papers. It's all gone. I just asked the people who had bought the building, did you find any papers? So all I have is what's been passed down from
This is
the
the old
family
headquarters,
members.
the old headquarters building you're talking about?
Yeah. It's complete disarray. Like I wish I could buy it, but it would just take so much work to rehab that. So we bought a separate facility in a different town, unfortunately, but it's a great facility and it's fully operational. But back to his paper. So what my dad told me is that my grandfather did the accounting for all of the stores. So he understood how much money they were making. That was part of the deal.
Yeah, well,
a
lot of stores famously have two books, right? I mean, we looked at buying I won't say what it was, but we looked at buying a stand, kind of a stand, and the owners proudly presented us with the two books, right?
Wow. Well, hopefully that didn't happen. I have not heard of that, but maybe
my point is that it's smart that he was doing the numbers because that's the first thing that goes, right? Is the numbers.
Yeah. For a country boy who dropped out of school, dropped out of the University of Georgia because they couldn't afford to keep him there and was farming cotton. He was a very savvy businessman. And he took a loan
you took a loan from his mother to get that truck. Is that right?
His grandmother, $35 loan he borrowed a Model A Ford that he sort of retrofitted to make it kind of a truck. And he and one of the farm hands on his family's farm, a man named John King, I've gotten in touch with his relatives, who was an African-American. So I like to talk about the role that John King played in those early years of starting Stuckeys. And it was my grandfather and John King driving around the countryside. They used that first $35 to buy pecans from farmers. It was a bumper crop year. And then they would take it to the local sheller and they'd make a couple pennies profit. And they just kept building up the profit. And from there, they had a little stand. And then my grandmother started making the candy. And they sold the candy at the stand, and then they sold quilts and cherry cider and other local stuff. And then from there, he built the first Stuckeys. Then he built second Stuckeys, and he built third Stuckeys. That's when he started getting the gas. And then World War II hit.
That's just pure enterprisingness. If that's the word. And
hard work.
Everyone knows about the local fruit stands, and the farmers will come and do their stand by the Walmart or wherever they're allowed to do their little stand, right, and make some money doing that. But he's parlaying. He keeps taking it up a notch, right? Like I had to sell gas. We had to make those pecans into rolls, honey. Make those rolls you make, and let's make some divinity on the side, and and maybe put some special wrappers on it. So, I think a lot. You went to college. I went to college, and I think a lot of colleges either don't want to share the excitement that business can provide, or they don't know it. They don't know how exciting business is. In fact, a lot of times I went to a liberal arts college where it was kind of a negative thing. Business was seen as a negative, like business people are, it was better. It wasn't like they would see a lot of the problems in the world were because of business. And of course, business could be a source of a lot of problems, greed and extremes of anything could be bad. But I think that there is so much fun and excitement and adventure in people building their own world, and doing it themselves. I think that that's just so purely American in some sense. I mean, the world's been doing it forever, but but because we developed the car and the road, there's something about Americana that is kind of unique to the human experience.
Yeah. And I think too often, especially when you're in your college days, you think of business major as being accounting and finances. Right. And I think more we need to talk about the importance of creativity, of storytelling, of experiences.
Right.
And I like what you said about building your own world, but at the same time, it's a world that has to connect with other people. Exactly. It has to have meaning beyond just, I'm creating this Zevia. It's got to be, well, how can other people relate to this? How is this important to people's lives? How is this making your life better? And fundamentally, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a problem solver, and you've got to solve real problems that real people are having in a way that's going to make their lives better. And
dealing with people.
That's what we do. And so I wish that was more communicated, and maybe it is because I haven't been to college in a while, but back in my day, it was pretty much you had to know accounting. Well, you have to know numbers. You have to be financially literate or you cannot be successful in business, period. But if that's not your strength, get a good accountant. We have a fabulous CFO who's full-time on staff, and we have an outside CPA firm, and they're the most important part of our operations, I think, along with our marketing folks. The marketing folks basically me.
Yeah. Well, the number one job of the accountant is to keep you from running out of money, right? I mean, that's when the game is over. So that's what our accountant's there for. Is they say
cash flow is king.
Forecasting, and I was just on Fox and Friends Saturday morning. They called us Wednesday and said, "Could you come on the show?" And we're in Illinois.
Wow, that's great.
We're near Peoria, right?
Yeah.
So my wife's on the phone with them. I'm say yes, say yes, say yes. I got a van and I drove 1,000 miles to New York City. I did the show. I got back in the van and drove home. But all of our forecasts, for 2021 became full of shit because of that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, we didn't expect to get national exposure in October. So you better buy more plastic, and we need more packaging, and we need more, it's like, it's just crazy how you have to be open to events, right? You could do all the best planning in the world. About planning. It's kind of like, it's a game you play, but that you're betting on the price of gasoline being here and the price of pecans being here and then the COVID not being extreme here. I mean, there's so much, right? There's so much gambling you're doing, really, in a sense.
Well, we're used to that because if you are in an agricultural commodity market,
right, several all over the place,
you have to accept there are good crop years, there are bad crop years, there's extreme weather, and then to layer onto that, we also, the majority of our locations, even though we license them, still we're dependent upon that entire infrastructure of roadside retail.
Right.
So if gas prices go up, or there's a gas rationing, there's a supply chain issue with the oil being delivered to the refineries, if there's a pipeline breakage, like that affects us. We're connected. So it just goes with the territory. One of my favorite quotes about plans is from Mike Tyson. Plans are great till you get punched in the face. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to get punched in the face.
Yeah.
Pretty much every day.
There was a hurricane in Texas like 4 years ago, and that walloped the plastics manufacturing industry. I mean, it just walloped it because all the big refineries were there and they all got flooded. A lot of the refineries.
Hurricane Michael devastated the pecan
Is that right?
orchards in Southwest Georgia.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It was terrible. It wiped out the entire state. We went from being the #1 state for pecan production since the 1950s.
Right.
We lost that. I think we were #3, and now we're back to #1.
Now, could you store pecans like you could store corn for a long time? Could you store pecans?
Yes, we have a cold storage. And we freeze them. We usually aren't going to keep them much longer than a year.
Right.
But my rule of thumb is 2 years, but they can last longer. But as far as our quality, we do usually a year.
One of my high school jobs was, I told you this about, I was friends with the Sanfilippo family. John B. Sanfilippo and son is a big meat, they call them the nut meat industry. And they're a big nut meat company. They bought Fisher Nuts, but they were neighbors of ours. I lived in their old house actually, and they had a plant near O'Hare Airport in Elk Grove Village, and they've moved since then. But they had an emergency. They had to get as many people they can to move the pecans out of cold storage out of the trucks. And when you're working in 30, 20 degree weather, picking up big cold bags of pecans, it's the crappiest work. It was so hard.
Work.
It was hard work. Yeah. So I relate to cold pecan storage. Oh my God, I've been there.
Well, and you know what we're working on? Everyone's dealing with the labor shortage issues.
Yeah.
And I think the reality, we've got to respect that it's not just a crisis. There are trends that we really need to pay attention to. And more people are looking for jobs that are going to be more meaningful than a frontline factory job. And so we're trying to embrace technology, getting new machinery in there. So the work at the pecan shelling plant, we're hoping this season's going to be better than even last season. We've invested, when my business partner and I bought the shelling plant, we've invested in some new machinery. So we'll have the crackers, the new cracking machine. It'll be in operation very soon.
Yeah, they still use those big machines that shake the pecan tree, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that
That's
is
pretty cool.
so much
Shake the tree and
fun.
all this. That's all.
Yes. Yes. So I will be filming that this season.
That's pretty cool.
We do not own or operate any orchards as part of the Stuckeys business. My family personally just has an orchard. It's in my father's name. He owns it, but obviously he'll let me on the orchard. And so we'll do some filming this season. This isn't a great crop, at least on our farm, but we'll try to get some other farms and film it. It's really cool to watch. It literally well, the interesting thing is not just pecans that come falling down. You get branches.
Yeah, you're shaking it. You got a giant robotic arm shaking a tree. It's pretty crazy.
And then they
put a net. They have a net,
along.
Right? Yeah,
they can. There's some that have like a parachute almost around it. It's really interesting. And so they shake it and then they catch it as it's falling. And then there's other machines where they have it's like a sweeper machine that comes along and sweeps up everything. And then you have to sort it to get all the branches and the debris and the limbs and the dirt out. And then it goes through the shelling process. The shelling process is fascinating. If you ever want to do a live at the shelling plant, we could walk through. We're about to be in full operation pretty soon. And they actually bathe the nuts. So you bathe them. Yeah. And
before you shell them.
They plump up before you shell them because they fill up with the moisture and they plump up. And so that does a couple things. One, it helps to crack them because they're bursting out. And the other is that when you do crack them, they're less likely to crumble because people don't want to buy. They want the halves, right? They want, they want the halves. They don't want the pieces.
Right.
So that's how so many of us got into the candy making business, because in the process, you inevitably end up with pieces, but the pieces are not as marketable.
Right.
So we opened a candy plant. The people before us from whom we bought the plant, they opened the candy plant to take the pieces and turn them into candy. And that's what the San Filippo family has done too.
Right, exactly. They big candy.
Yeah.
So that's the idea is you take the less successful part of the process, the crumble, the broken pieces, which still taste delicious, but what do you do with them? Well, maybe you turn them into a powder for like baking, or maybe you turn it into a candy.
Pecan meal. That gets into marketing. I really think the pecan, however you want to say it, the industry is finally starting to do a better job of marketing what an amazing nut this is. It's the only snack nut native to this country.
Is that right?
Yes. Unless you count the filbert. I know some Oregonians get very riled up when I say we're the only snack nut, but I have never snacked on a filbert. The other is the black walnut, which I've never snacked on either. Yeah.
We use black walnut for ice cream. It's good in ice cream. And we have black walnuts in Illinois.
Snack nut. It's not you don't snack on it.
Well, it'll stain your hands forever.
It's bitter. I'm sorry. I don't mean to diss the nut world, because we do buy walnuts and we put them in some of our products. So we sell almonds, we sell cashews. So we're in the nut world.
No, pecan's a great nut. You can eat a lot of pecans without getting sick. You eat too many cashews, you're going to get sick. It's so rich. And walnuts are kind of funny too. I love walnuts, but black walnuts are bitter. But we have them around here, and the kids would go out, and because the parents, they go out and collect the walnuts, and their hands would turn black. There's so much dye in them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So pecans are super healthy. They're high in antioxidants. They're very popular for the keto diet because their carbohydrate content is super high. They're buttery, so they're good in baking, but they're also good for snacking. So unlike some of the other nuts, they really are excellent for baking. And so now we're trying to market it more as like, it's not just for baking, it's for snacking. It should be year round. So we're trying to expand markets for pecans, and the pecan industry has finally organized. They're in 20 different states. So unlike the pistachio and the almond that are concentrated in California. And most of the big companies, are actually cooperatives, and all the farmers have gotten organized and they work together. Like Blue Diamond and Emerald are actually co-ops. So it's not like any one entity, but they're all organized and they've got federal marketing orders in place through the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, and those have been in place for decades. Whereas the pecan farmers, we're all over the place. We're scrappy. We're in 20 states. We haven't been organized until the past few years when we finally agreed to self-tax ourselves, and that money goes to USDA for a federal marketing order. So we're starting to market. We're starting to get the word out about the health benefits, the taste benefits, the sustainability benefits of the pecan. Uses less water than a lot of the other nuts. The almond in particular, which is in a drought-ridden area, it has had some damaging impact on the California environment. So I think we need to get the story out. And again, I don't mean to like diss the other almonds, because we're all in the nut world, but we want to tell the story of the pecan and how it is our native nut. Thomas Jefferson grew pecans. George Washington grew pecans. It's part of our heritage.
I like that you said it's our native nut. That's actually
it is.
That's pretty good marketing.
It grew
right there.
wild. I mean, the Native Americans, they obviously the first inhabitants of our country, and they were the first ones to really start recognizing.
How did they eat it? What did the Native Americans do with pecans?
So they came up with the word. It's an Algonquin. Pecan is an Algonquin word, and it translates into nut that's hard to crack. And from what I know, they ate it as a nut. And how they cracked it, well, you can crack it with a stone, but a little secret, this is what George Washington did. He would keep pecans in his pocket during the Revolutionary War. We were the first snack pack. And he would keep pecans in his pocket, and he would take them out. And if you squeeze them together, they crack.
Oh, that makes sense.
So
a little leverage.
That's how you can crack a pecan without having to have a nutcracker. Just get a couple of them in your hand and you squeeze real tightly, and they'll crack. And they're delicious.
They're not nearly as hard to crack as a walnut, for sure, because they have a thinner.
Walnut you cannot do that with.
No, you need a nutcracker with a walnut. And also walnut, you have to pick out you get the brittle pieces of shell in there too. It's a pain that you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
The pecans are just a tender meat. It's a beautiful thing. No, you could sing praises to me all day of pecans. I love pecans. So you're obviously third generation. So Stuckey's was not known. Americana is not known for health. I mean, you guys sold lots of cigarettes too, like Pall Malls and stuff. I mean, it was the era.
We still do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We still sell cigarettes. We sell vape products. I mean,
yeah. So, but you are
consumer
definitely
wants.
Yeah, you're selling to the consumer. I understand that, but you are also talking about ketone diets, and you're talking about health benefits, and that's definitely your era, our generation. And so, how do you? I won't say de-risk, but how do you take the Stuckey's name now and elevate it in the American consciousness? How are you going to do it?
Well, I think part of it is being authentic and true to your brand. So I'm not going to come out and say all of our products are healthy. That's just not authentic, and that's not honest. What I am going to talk about is what our brand has been and what it is moving forward. And the essence of our brand is the road trip. And then part of that is that we've sold pecan products throughout our history. But I'm not just selling pecans, I'm selling the road trip. I'm selling that sense of adventure and fun and exploration. So even if your connection with our brand is maybe going to your local convenience store, we're in grocery channels, and you find our product, we're still associated, we're connected with the road trip. And I embrace the fact that we sell sugared products. I'm not going to say candy is healthy for you. What I am going to say is, I think you need to treat yourself sometimes.
Absolutely.
And we give choices. We all make choices in life. We all make hopefully informed choices. And so what we do is we make the products available that we know people who are traveling on the road. Most of our most of our products you'll find in interstate locations, but we also do really well in anything that's kind of touristy. So hotel, gift shops is a great market for us. And then we are finding success with grocery store channels. So, but where we're curating product for people is mostly on the interstates. And we know that niche and we know what people buy. And so we offer cigarettes, we offer candy, we offer quick road snacks, we offer hot food snacks, at least our licensees do. And we curate kitschy souvenirs, and that's us. We embrace the kitsch, we embrace the candy. It's what we do.
How many now? You had the little standalone little inner shops, the little shacks inside the other businesses, right? I mean, like kiosks, right? The little Stuckey kiosks.
Yeah, I mean, basically,
that was the way.
What my father did. My father did this. He called it Stuckeys Express, and it wasn't necessarily like here's a display or here's a kiosk, but he would say, we'll have X number of square feet, usually about 250 square feet within your store. Right. And then a sales rep would come in and work with their existing floor plan. So the store would already have a gondola or an end cap, and we offered shippers and some displays, but we would also offer planograms with their existing plan and figure out how to put our product in. If it's a chain, like we're in some pilot stores, or we're in I think it's 9 Parker's locations. That's a convenience store chain based out of Savannah. And so they have a consistent plan to their store. So all of our product is in the same location.
Yeah, for the listeners who don't know this, we were in Barnes and Nobles there for a while, and all those stores, when it's a chain like that, they have what they call the planogram, and it might literally be a fake store somewhere near headquarters that's just basically like a theater set. And they ergonomically check it out and make sure that when you walk this way, you're in the Lego aisle, and then over here is the book aisle, and there's the children's books first because you don't want to look at the adult literature if you're looking at Legos. Like, they really think this through, and it's important, and so they really plan it out. So they call it the planogram. That's what a planogram is. That's what people know.
Yeah. So sorry, throwing out an industry term that I'd never even heard of.
No, I had
2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And end caps are going to be that end display that you see. A gondola is going to be kind of what you think it might be, is a display you'll see in a store that's 2-sided, tends to be long and narrow, just like a gondola boat. Right. And then we also offer our own racking and displays. Lately, we've come up with a concept that does look a little like a kiosk. It's a mini Stuckey store, and it's got 4 shelves, and we come up with a way that you can merchandise it, but you can put whatever product you want in it from our wholesale catalog. So we offer suggested product because some retailers want that, but they can also merchandise that however they want. And if they spend a certain amount of money on buying product from us, they get the display for free. So we're doing that's a kiosk type concept but we don't own or operate the stores. We're not franchising. We don't have the capacity to do that with our current structure. That's just the reality.
Is that in your future at all, as brick and mortar?
I hope so, but I think we're going to be very deliberate and thoughtful about how we grow, and we want to make sure we grow in a way that makes sense. And frankly, the way we're making revenue is the sale of product. And I don't want us to get into something that's really not our expertise. So operating stores is not something that we do. Yeah. So we'll see.
Are you going to hire a writer? Are you going to hire a writer to make a Netflix show about Stuckeys? Because I think that would be
we've had inquiries.
It's like Dallas or Dynasty. I mean, it's fantastic. There's a lot of story there.
No, we've been talking with a couple of networks, and we'll see. I have learned throughout my career, especially in politics, it's good to be optimistic. It's good to get excited, but at the same time, temper it. And especially in the entertainment world. So yes, we have conversations. We've written some treatments. We've talked with network execs. So we'll see.
Is this more the reality TV realm kind of thing?
We've talked both unscripted and scripted.
Yeah.
There's interest in both. There's interest in feature film. There's interest in a series, a docu-series. The exciting thing right now in entertainment, and I know the entertainment world as just a consumer who
Well,
likes to
you're
watch
also in Georgia.
movies,
You're also in Georgia.
right?
That's the new Hollywood, right?
We're a film capital, and I know a
Yeah.
lot of people in the industry, but
Yeah.
I am not an expert in the industry. I do have people that I have consulted with to help me navigate all this. But in any event, I think it's an exciting time in the entertainment industry. Despite COVID, it's actually opened up opportunities where more and more people are live streaming content, and it's democratized, I think, access to interesting and different content that in the old world, where you really had to have a lot of clout and you had to have a lot of distribution in order to get your film out there through the traditional brick and mortar theaters. Now you can live stream, and
Yeah.
there's so many different opportunities. There's not like growing up in our era in the 70s, you were ABC, CBS, and NBC. Like that was it.
Right.
And, I'm also in the town where CNN was founded, and that
Right.
completely changed things. Suddenly opened up a whole world of these other networks.
Well,
So
the
I
risk
think the opportunity is there.
the risk was probably higher back then too. I mean,
Oh,
to
yeah.
finance a movie, if it failed, where would it go? Where do movies go to die in the '60s, right? But now there's a lot of garbage on Netflix. There's a lot of garbage on cable. There's a lot of, so
Yeah.
there's room for good and there's room for bad. There's like more room, and that's also, I think that the industry's so
Yeah.
big now. It's probably a lot cheaper to make a movie now because there's lots of cheaper equipment. It's really high end equipment, and people
Yeah.
are hungry. People are willing to work for nothing to get their name on a project. So when I was at CNN, when I was at Fox, so many of the people work there are just really young, bright,
Yeah.
very, very hardworking people. And
Yeah.
it makes sense because who wouldn't want to work at a big network, right? So I think it's a good time to be in entertainment, probably.
Yeah, but you're right. There is a lot of garbage out there too. I'm extremely mindful of that. And so the thing about doing maybe a Stuckey's TV show or movie is, if it happens, great. But if not, I'm okay. And so that gives me the power to be extremely protective of the brand. And I have said repeatedly, we're not going to be Honey Boo Boo. No disrespect, because I actually watched that show. That's in Middle Georgia from where I am, but that's not us. And we're not going to be the Real Housewives of, you name the city.
Right.
We're not going to fight. I talked to one network and they said, well, can we get some footage of you fighting with your dad? And I'm like, good Lord, no. Like, we have our disputes, but no, that's not who we are. I love my father. I respect my father. I don't want to have us on TV fighting. And we don't really fight like the fights I see on TV. That's just not us. That's not authentic.
Well,
it's not our brand.
It goes against type, but my dad, his right-hand man was Willie. Willie was a black guy from Chicago, and my dad opened a business in our backyard, a 75-bed nursing home. And but all of the people in the laundry room and the kitchen, and a lot of the nurses' aides were African-American people from Chicago, from Willie's neighborhood, and Willie picked the people. So
I love it.
So people say, and my dad, by today's standards, would have definitely been an Archie Bunker type guy, right? He had a big mouth and he didn't talk politically correct at all. But he worked hand in hand, next to Willie. They built homes together. I mean, that people misunderstand, I think, how people have gotten along in the past. It's always like a movie about the KKK and people are, these people are horrible. These people, I think a majority of the human experiences when people actually work together, they actually do things together.
And, you brought up something very interesting. And, I mentioned this earlier about John King, who worked with my grandfather. I think it's really important to acknowledge the role that African Americans played in creating white wealth. Mm-hmm. Certainly during that era.
Absolutely. Right.
Oh, by the way, my cat has joined us. She likes to join every Zoom call. I was surprised she hadn't been on sooner. So I think it's important to acknowledge that role, and also the role of women. Our candy plant was completely staffed by women during World War II.
Right.
I mean, there was nobody to work the factory other than women. And so it wasn't just finding workers. It was empowering women. It was empowering families. It was creating economic prosperity for a community. And So I think,
But it's like
that
it's an
aspect is interesting.
intermingling of exploitation and empowerment, like you said, like the two E words. They kind of
Yeah.
commingle in a way. You could choose to look at it as like, well, black people were making white people rich. Yes, yes, you could look at it that way, but you could also look at it's like work is a good thing for everybody to do. Like there is
Yeah.
kids today should not look down on certain kinds of jobs. I don't think, unless it's maybe
Yeah.
prostitution or something like that. But my point is, hard work is its own reward, right?
I think so. I think so. But I think it's also important to recognize, like trying to find, trying to create meaning, trying to create a sense of culture. I am mindful that the work at our candy plant is hard, that the work at the shelling plant is hard, that these are low income jobs, and we need to provide an opportunity as much as we can. And we're working on it. Like, it's not going to happen overnight, but we have an HR person we brought in the past couple months, and we're putting together training. We're putting together teams. We're putting together where you can cross train. So if you learn to roast nuts, that you can also learn to make candy on the chocolate line, and maybe you can be in the shelling side. So we're trying to create these opportunities so you can build your skill set, so you're not in a dead end job, and that their work is valued and that they're valued. And then also, where possible, we're getting machinery in for some of this drudgery work.
Right.
It's not super exciting to be picking shells out of the pecan line all day. It's necessary. That's largely done by hand right now.
And I see you in the factory taking pictures with people and doing some of the work.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that if the people see that the people running it are not too high up to actually get their hands dirty. What we tell people here is, what are you interested in? And they'll say, well, and we're hiring them to be a kidding facility to put toys in boxes, right? And then, what do you want to do? What are you interested in? Oh, I love to make videos. I'm like, okay, well, we're a business, so we're busy. And the important thing is whatever needs to be done at that point in time is what everyone's doing, right? But the minute things get a little bit less busy, you may move. We're going to talk about you doing video, right? So
that's great.
So it's like, because you don't want to just say, okay, that job's done, goodbye, right? If the person wants to stick around and learn something else that you could use as a business person, so that's what we try to do, is try to integrate them in term, find their passion, and hopefully move them towards their passion.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, no, I think that's great. And just also letting them know, not only that you're there and you're hands-on, but that you want them to know, like, they could actually have a chance of, maybe they could be CEO someday. I'm not going to be around forever.
That's right.
I love the idea, like, there's a pathway to opportunity.
Exactly.
And I'm not one of these people that believes, like, by God, Stuckey has to stay in the Stuckey family, like, running it. You can keep the ownership in the family, but a family member isn't always the best person to run the company. And there's a big difference in ownership and management. And so what I want to foster is a sense of, we want qualified people in charge. And that may or may not be someone with the last name Stuckey. And I co-own this company, so it could be someone with the last name Lamar, which is my business partner. So we want people to know you have opportunity if you work for Stuckeys. That's what we're working on. It's a process.
Yeah, I think the transparency of letting people know, like, it's okay to let people that are just on the floor, right, understand a little bit what's going on with this business. Like, you see that if our salespeople don't do their jobs, then you don't have a job. Like, everyone here is important, and we're all working together to make this all happen. It's, I think I think people like to know that you're open to sharing with them how this business is actually running. They're just yeah, it's really cool. Well, listen, thank you so much for sharing your time with me. I just got a knock on my door. That means my time is up.
Time's up, huh?
I actually have a business to run too.
Yeah.
I love doing this, but I do this, like, I don't usually interview people during the day at 10 in the morning. And it's like, like I said, we got hit with about 1,000 orders in one day. So we're like crazy over here. So
I can totally relate. Yeah. Our demand is crazy, and we're focusing on fulfillment right now. Yeah. I might literally have to get on the candy line to help fill these orders.
Right. Yeah. I think it's fun.
I do what you got to do.
I had a tape gun in my hand until 10 o'clock last night, taping up boxes, and I was actually enjoying myself because it's like cha-ching. It's
Yeah, no,
business.
there's a certain amount of fulfillment that comes
Yeah.
with doing that manual labor. And I find
Yeah.
it, I like to get to the warehouse at least once a month, and I'll spend a day working with the fulfillment team and
Mhm.
and actually helping them fulfill orders.
Yeah. It's
I
awesome.
enjoy it.
Business is fun. Well, listen,
Yeah,
you're fun. Thank you so much for coming to my show.
thank you. It's been a pleasure. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Well,
have
we'll
me
talk
back.
again. If there's any new news about Stuckies, let me know. We'll do this again. Okay.
I'd love that. Have an
Thank you,
awesome rest of your
Stephanie.
day. Good
Oh,
luck
you too,
filling all
Stephanie.
those orders.
Thanks. You
All
too.
right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.